Turn in your Bible to the book of Genesis, chapter 49. We're going to pick up where we left off last time, which is about 3 weeks ago. But before we do that, let me remind you of 4 things. First of all, Jacob's about to die at this point in the story. So he summoned all of his sons to his deathbed in order to bless them one by one, beginning with Reuben. Secondly, the blessings that he bestowed upon his sons were actually prophecies. They were prophecies about what would happen in the future to each of the tribes of Israel. You see, each tribe was named after one of Jacob's sons, and it consisted of that son's descendants. As an example, the tribe of Reuben was named after Jacob's oldest son, Reuben, and it consisted of Reuben's descendants. So the blessing that Jacob gave to Reuben was actually a prophecy about what would happen to the tribe of Reuben sometime in the future. Does everyone understand that? Good. Thirdly, the future and destiny of each tribe was affected by the character and the actions of the ancestor they descended from. In other words, Reuben's character and actions affected the future and destiny of the tribe of Reuben. Simeon's cruel actions at Shechem and his lack of character affected the destiny and the future of the tribe of Simeon. And the same holds true for each of the tribes. And last but not least, these prophecies are referred to as blessings. In fact, if you have commentaries at home on the book of Genesis, you probably notice that Genesis chapter 49 is titled as the blessings of Jacob. And so you're probably wondering, if these blessings are actually prophecies, why aren't they titled as prophecies? Why are they referred to as blessings? Well, the reason they're referred to as blessings is because of verse number 28. Look at verse number 28 and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All these, referring to the 12 sons of Jacob, are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each the blessing appropriate to him. Do you see that? The prophecies given to each of the 12 sons are referred to as blessings, and that's why chapter 49 is referred to as the blessings of Jacob, even though they're really prophecies. It's because of verse number 28. So, now that I've reminded you of those 4 things, let's pick up where we left off, which is verse number 19, the prophecy that was given to Gad. It says, Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Now, this prophecy tells us that the tribe of Gad would constantly and continually be attacked by its enemies. And when you understand, or when you see where this tribe was located, you'll understand why that was. Take a look at the map on the screen and notice where the tribe of Gad was located. In fact, let me just kind of point it out to you. This is the territory of Gad. The tribe of Gad was located in this area. This is the Sea of Galilee. This is Hula Lake. But the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River runs all the way down to the Dead Sea. But here's what I want you to notice. Gad, the tribe of Gad, is located on the east side of the Jordan River. But more importantly, its western border ran along the Jordan Valley from the Sea of Galilee all the way to the Dead Sea. So the easiest way into Israel by land was through the land that was allotted to the tribe of Gad. So every marauding band who invaded Israel went through the territory of Gad. And when they left, they had to go back through the territory of Gad. So if Israel was going to be invaded and attacked, they were always going to go through the tribe of Gad. So out of necessity, the men of Gad became mighty warriors. Turn with me, if you would, to the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verses 8 through 15. And I want you to notice how the men of Gad are described. It says, some brave and experienced warriors from the tribe of Gad also defected to David while he was at the stronghold in the wilderness. They were expert with both shield and spear, as fierce as lions and swift as deers on the mountains. Ezer was their leader, Obadiah was second, Eliab was third, Mishmanah was fourth, Jeremiah was fifth, Attai was sixth. And here's kind of something kind of interesting. We pronounce it Attai, but over in Israel it's Ittai. And our first tour guide, when Lisa and I first went to Israel, was a guy by the name of Ittai. And I said, well, that's an interesting name. I said, why did your mother name you Ittai? Is there some kind of Jewish name there? And he said, I'm from the tribe of Gad. And this is where that comes from. Ittai, or Attai as we pronounce it, was sixth. Eliel was seventh. Johanan was eighth. Elzabad was ninth. Jeremiah was 10th. Macbenai was 11th. These warriors from Gad were army commanders, and that's why they're numbered. All of these guys were the commanders, and they all came from the tribe of Gad. Now notice what it says. The weakest among them could take on 100 regular troops, and the strongest could take on 1,000. Now, we know that's a hyperbole, that's an exaggeration in order to prove a point, but it's really talking about what mighty warriors they were. These were the men who crossed the Jordan River during its seasonal flooding at the beginning of the year, and they drove out all the people living in the lowlands on both the east and the west banks. Now, when you go to Israel today, because they've had a drought for the last 8 or 9 years, you'll look at the Jordan River and you're thinking, that's not a river. It's kind of like the Illinois River. When we've had a drought for a while, you have to drag your canoes over the gravel bars, right? Well, the Jordan River kind of looks like that. But when you have a flood on the Illinois River and it gets up 14, 15 feet over flood level, the Jordan River is like that. And these are the guys that would cross it when it was flooding. Nothing stopped them. Now, trust me, to live where the tribe of Gad was located and where they were placed, you had to be tough. And that type of environment had an effect on the personality of the members of that tribe. In fact, that's why Elijah came across as a mean and tough as nails prophet. It's because Elijah was from the tribe of Gad. So when you study these stories about Elijah, his personality is so gruff. It's like, man, we want to see these prophets of God to be loving and kind and kind of like Moses. Every once in a while, Moses got upset. But he loved the people. He cared for the people. When you see Elijah, it's not like that at all. Why? Because he was from the tribe of Gad. Now, notice a little story about him, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Look at 2 Kings chapter 1, verse number 10. But Elijah replied to the captain, "If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and destroy you and your 50 men." Then fire fell from heaven and killed them all. Now, you remember the story. The king, who was an evil king, actually fell through the lattice, and he asked his servants to go and ask some of the gods, the priests of the other gods, pagan gods, idols, whether or not he was going to survive. And Elijah meets them coming, or actually going to that, and he says, you go back and you tell the king, because he didn't come and summon the God of Israel, he's going to die. And of course, they go back and they tell him what this man said to them. And he said, what did he look like? And they described him and said, that's Elijah. You bring him back to me. So they take 50 men, 50 soldiers to go get Elijah. And they said, the king wants you. You need to come with us. And he just pops it off and says, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and destroy you all. And boom, it does. And you know the story. This happens again. The king sends out another 50. And finally, the next one he sends out after that says, oh, you're a man of God. I'm only doing what I said. And so Elijah finally goes with him. But let me ask you a question. Was that God's will for fire to come down from heaven and destroy 51 men, and then another time another 51 men? Was that God's will? No. Then why did God do it? Because Elijah put him in a difficult spot. You see, Moses said, before the Bible was written, he wrote the first 5 books, and you need to remember when Elijah came, there wasn't the complete Bible. So Moses told them, this is how you'll know a man is a prophet from God. If the things that he says or he prophesies comes to pass, you will know that he's a man of God. But if the things he prophesies does not come to pass, he is not a prophet of God. Well, Elijah was a prophet of God, but he put God in a difficult position because when they came, he said, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven. Well, if fire didn't come down from heaven, what did it mean? It meant that he wasn't a prophet of God, and he was. So God had to honor that request. But that's also why Elijah was taken out of this world. You know, we always wonder, why did that chariot of fire come down and take him? And his mantle had to go to Elijah because he was getting out of control. He was doing things that weren't God's will. And as a prophet of God, God had to honor that. So finally he says, I've got to take this man. But what's interesting is when you study the personality and you understand he's from the tribe of Gad, that's the type of men these warriors were. But the reason they were that way is because they had to fight continually and constantly because you did not come into Israel except through the borders or the territory of Gad. Now, let's look at the prophecy that was given to Asher. Look at verse number 20. Asher will dine on rich foods and produce food fit for kings. Now, the tribe of Asher was located in one of the most fertile locations in all of Israel. In fact, the territory of Asher was known for its vast olive groves, and that's still true today. Today, most of the olive oil that's produced in Israel comes from Asher's territory. In fact, there's a valley in Asher's territory that's actually called the Valley of the Olive. Now, here's what's interesting. In Deuteronomy chapter 33, Moses blessed each tribe just as Jacob blessed each of his sons. And like the blessings of Jacob, the blessings that Moses bestowed upon each tribe were actually prophecies. Now, did you catch what I was saying? Moses did the very same thing that Jacob did. On his deathbed, Jacob called for his 12 sons. He gathered them around his deathbed, and he prophesied to each one. But they were really prophecies concerning their descendants, the tribe that would become, or that was named after them, that would become a tribe. Well, Moses did the very same thing. He doesn't get to go into the promised land. So right before he dies, he calls the leaders of the tribes, and he prophesies to each one of the tribes just as Jacob did. So I want you to notice the blessing that Moses gave to Asher. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse number 24. About Asher, he said, most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him bathe his feet in oil. Now, the word oil is translated from the Hebrew word shemen, and it can refer to either olive oil or petroleum oil, depending upon the context. Now, because the territory of Asher produces more olives and olive oil than any other tribal area, most scholars, of course, believe that it's referring to olive oil, and I believe that. But I also believe it refers to petroleum oil also. And let me explain why I believe that. In 2009, natural gas and oil were discovered in the Mediterranean Sea just off the coast of Israel. And when I say right off the coast of Israel, I mean off the coast of Asher. Take a look at the map where the natural gas and oil were found. Here's a map. This here is to Israel today. If you see this little place here, this is the West Bank. Israel controls all of this, but they allow the Palestinians to live in their own area and actually come in and to govern themselves. When you go to Israel with me, you'll be able to spot the Palestinian areas from the Jewish areas very easily. You go into the Palestinian areas, it's trashy, it's dirty, unbelievable. In fact, if you go to Egypt, it's kind of interesting, but you go to the pyramids of Giza, the Cheops, pyramids of Cheops, and there's trash all around it. No one even picks it up. Kind of blows your mind. If you walk up on Mount Sinai in Egypt and you get to the very top, you'll find all this trash littering it. It's like they have no respect for it. And when you go into Israel, what you'll find is they don't have a sanitation department. And it's not because Israel doesn't provide the money to them for it, they just don't see the need. And that's the way Egypt is. You're driving through Cairo and you see these irrigation ditches and they're just full of trash. Lisa and I were just shocked. One day we saw this dead horse. Do you remember seeing that, Shirley? There was this dead horse, and there was a little bitty girl. She's probably 2 or 3 years old, and she's up playing on this bloated dead horse, and she's jumping up, and you see these gases coming out of its stomach. But they're just so used to trash. Well, anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to that. I want to show you this. All of this is Israel, but right here is Gaza. This is where today they're having all the problems where they're shooting those missiles out, and now they're long range, so they're able to go into Tel Aviv, and they're also hitting some of Jerusalem. And don't worry if you're going with me, we're still going, and it's safe. All right? Now, if Iran begins to shoot, it's different. But anyways, now, and seriously, it is safe. This right here is the oil and natural gas that they found. Now go back to the map that shows where Asher is, but I want you to see Haifa. See this right here and see how it kind of comes in? There's Haifa right here. This is right out here. Now if you notice, this shows that old Israel, Israel today only comes to here, but during the day it goes all the way up into Lebanon. And one day it will go even further. But it actually goes all the way to Lebanon, and right out here, right off the coast, is the oil and natural gas that they found in 2009. So I personally believe that when Moses prophesied that, he was referring to the olive oil, but he was also referring to the petroleum oil. So to be honest with you, when I read this, I'm just blown away. It amazes me how accurate Jacob and Moses' prophecies were concerning the tribes of Israel. But let me go a little bit further. Let me ask you a question. What famous person in the Bible came from the tribe of Asher? Does anyone know? New Testament. Anyone? Anna the prophetess. Look with me, if you would, in Luke chapter 2, verses 36 through 38. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. She was the daughter of Phanuel from the tribe of Asher. And she was very old. Her husband died when they had been married only 7 years. Then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and prayer. She came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child, this is Jesus, to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. Now, why do I bring this up? Because this is evidence that the Jews in Jesus' time still maintained their tribal identity. Somewhere down the line, Christians began teaching, which is not biblical, that the only tribal identity there was during the time of Jesus was the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. The 10 northern tribes had gone into captivity and they lost their tribal identity. People, that is not true. This is also evidence that representatives of the 10 northern tribes still existed 700 years after the Assyrian captivity. Now, why do I bring this up? Because many times we refer to the 10 northern tribes that were carried into captivity as the lost tribes. How many of you have ever heard of the lost tribes? Well, supposedly when Assyria came in 722 and they took them into captivity, a lot of people teach, which is not biblical and not true at all, that they took everyone into captivity. And that's not the case. They only took the rich. They only took the educated. They only took the most skilled. The rest they left behind. And then they took people from other nations that they had conquered and they brought them in, and there was some intermingling. But many of the Jews were left behind and they kept their tribal identity. So there are no lost tribes. We refer to them as the lost tribes because they didn't hang on to their identity as much, and many of them became Samaritans and they were mixed, and we see that in the time of Jesus. But here we have evidence, and we do through other places, where the Jews in Jesus' time still held on to their tribal identity. Anna the prophetess was from the tribe of Asher. And we see that in other areas also. I just wanted to bring that up. Now, let's look at the prophecy that was given to Naphtali. You've heard it pronounced, and I grew up pronouncing it Naphtali, but they pronounce it Naphtali. Look at verse 21. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. Now, the name Naphtali means to struggle or to wrestle with. Look at Genesis chapter 30, verse number 8. Remember, between Rachel and Leah, there's this competition going on. Jacob was attracted to Rachel. He loved her. He wanted to marry her. Of course, he was tricked and he ended up marrying Leah. He was upset about it, went to talk to Laban. Laban corrected the situation. But now he has 2 wives. And this created competition between the 2. And remember that Leah was fertile myrtle. She started having children right away, but Rachel couldn't have children. So, of course, she gives her handmaiden. Well, a child is finally given, and notice what Rachel does. This is Genesis 38. Then Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister. What does she mean, struggle? This is a competition. Who can birth the most sons? And I have one. So she named him Naphtali. Now, the word struggle in Genesis chapter 38, when she says, I've had a great struggle, is Naphtali. But she names him Naphtali, which literally means struggle or wrestling. So the picture that this prophecy is painting is of a deer that's been captured, and it is struggling against its captors. It's wrestling against its captors, but then it's let loose. Now, what happens when a captured deer is let loose? Takes off like a rocket. It's out of there and it's gone. So Jacob said that Naphtali would be like a deer let loose. It would take off traveling, and it would speak beautiful words. Did you catch that? Look at verse 21 again. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. This is kind of like studying poetry in English. How many of you had to take a 19th century romantic literature or something like that? It's like, it didn't make sense. Some of you might feel this way about the Bible. It's like, that's a prophecy? That doesn't even make sense. Well, it will when I explain it to you. So let me ask you a few questions. Where did Jesus grow up? Where did Jesus grow up? Not a trick question. Nazareth. And where is Nazareth located? It's located in the territory of Zebulun. Right here is Zebulun. And when you come in and you look for where Nazareth is right there. So, Jesus grew up in Nazareth, which was in the territory of Zebulun. And when he began his ministry, what city did he operate his ministry out of? In other words, where was his ministry headquarters? Does anyone know? You know this. Capernaum. You don't even hear of Capernaum in the Old Testament, and I'll explain why when you go with me to Israel, those of you who are going with me. But you never hear about Capernaum. It's not mentioned one time in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament it's mentioned all the time. Why is it mentioned all the time? It's mentioned all the time because that became Jesus' headquarters for his ministry. Look at Matthew chapter 4, verse number 13. Leaving Nazareth, Jesus went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. So Capernaum became Jesus' home, and Capernaum is located in the territory of Naphtali. Look at the map again. I'll show you where it's located. This is Zebulun right here. Right there is Nazareth. There's a valley that leads to the Sea of Galilee, and right there on the northern coast of the Sea of Galilee, in the area of Naphtali, right there is Capernaum. And that's where Jesus moved to begin his ministry. Now, let me ask you one more question. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but let me ask one more question. Where did the majority of Jesus' disciples come from? Were you sleeping during Sunday school? Well, they came from the territories of Zebulun and Naphtali. In fact, the only one who did not come from the area of Galilee. And the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali actually made up what was known as the Galilean area. So, the only disciple who didn't come from the area of Galilee was Judas. Yeah. Now, let me show you something interesting. We're going to go back to Matthew chapter 4, verse number 13, where we saw that Jesus moved to Capernaum. If you want another verse, go to Matthew chapter 9, verse number 1, but we're not going to look at it. But when Jesus began his ministry, he moved from Nazareth, from where he grew up, to Capernaum. We're going to read Matthew 4:13, but this time we're also going to read verses 14, 15, and 16, because there's a reason why this is mentioned. Let's read it. He went first, talking about Jesus, he went first to Nazareth. He grew up in Nazareth, in other words. Then left there and he moved to Capernaum beside the Sea of Galilee, in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali, which now you know was referred to as the area of Galilee. Now, this fulfilled what God said through the prophet Isaiah. In the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, beside the sea, beyond the Jordan River, in Galilee, where so many Gentiles live. The people who sat in darkness because they were pagans, they didn't know God's truth, have seen a great light. And for those who lived in the land where death cast its shadow, a light has shined. Now, the prophecy that Matthew is quoting is found in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. We're not going to read it because Matthew quoted it, so there's no need to. But this prophecy says that a great light will come to the area of Galilee, to be more specific, to the territories of Naphtali and Zebulun. And of course, if you read the prophecy in Isaiah chapter 9, not just verses 1 and 2, read verses 1 through 7. And if you read this prophecy in context, it's talking about the light and the glory of the Messiah. Everyone agrees with that. It doesn't matter if you're a non-believer or a believer. If you're a Jew who is not a Messianic Jew and you're studying Isaiah chapter 9, you know that the light and the glory that this prophecy is talking about is the light and glory of the Messiah. So what this prophecy was saying was that the Messiah would come from the territories of Naphtali and Zebulun. And Matthew quoted that prophecy to show that Jesus has fulfilled the Messianic prophecies. Think about this. What tribe was Jesus from? What was he a descendant of? The tribe of Judah. So even though he was from the tribe of Judah, he was raised in Nazareth, which was in the territory of Zebulun, and he moved to Capernaum when he began his ministry, which was in the territory of Naphtali. So the prophecy in Isaiah was fulfilled to a T. The Messiah, who came from the tribe of Judah, grew up and made his home in the land of Zebulun in Naphtali, fulfilling the Messianic prophecy, and it happened before he even had the ability to make these decisions. Every once in a while you'll hear a liberal scholar say, well, Jesus just read those and then he went out and fulfilled them, or tried to fulfill them to make himself look like the Messiah. People, these things happened. Many times these Messianic prophecies before he was ever to the age of an adult. It's amazing. And when you figure out the possibilities, he's from the tribe of Judah, so he's got to be born in the area of the tribe of Judah, so he has to go to Bethlehem. God makes that happen. But just to let you know that this is the Messiah, when King Herod decides to kill him, the prophecy said that he'll come out of Egypt, so he had to go to Egypt. He's just an infant. He comes out of Egypt, but he doesn't go back to the tribe of Judah. Where does he go? He goes to Nazareth. Why? Because this prophecy said the Messiah is going to come from the land of Zebulun. And then he moves to Capernaum to start his ministry, and this great light comes. People, Jesus fulfilled all of these Messianic prophecies down to the nth degree. So, that's not what I want to show you here. That has nothing to do with the prophecy I'm going to show you. But you need to know that. So now that you know that, let's look at the prophecy that was given to the tribe of Naphtali within this context. Look back at Genesis 49:21. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. And boy, did that ever come true. Jacob nailed that spot on, because at the age of 30, Jesus was like a deer let loose, going all over Israel preaching the kingdom of God. But his headquarters were from Naphtali. And after his resurrection and his ascension to heaven, his disciples, who were from Zebulun and Naphtali, from the area of Galilee, were like deer let loose, going all over the world, preaching the gospel, preaching the most beautiful words that a person would ever hear, which is the gospel. So they fulfilled Jacob's prophecy. Jacob is not only telling these tribes what's going to happen, where they're located, the identity of them, certain things that's going to take place, but he even goes so far to talk to the tribe from which the Messiah is going to put his headquarters in, what's going to happen when the Messiah comes, and the disciples who grew up there, what they're going to do. In fact, the most prominent disciples, I'll actually point to a little city. There's a little city that's right next to where the Jordan River comes in, the mouth of the Jordan into the Sea of Galilee. That's where Peter and Andrew were from, and James and John. Of course, they moved also to Capernaum, which was probably a half a mile away at the most. But they were there in the headquarters. And after the ascension of Jesus, man, they were like deer let loose, speaking beautiful words of the gospel of Jesus. Now let's look at the prophecy to Joseph. Look at Genesis 49, and we're going to read verses 22 through 26. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel. Because of your father's God who helps you, because of the Almighty who blesses you with the blessings of the skies above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and the womb. The blessings of your father have surpassed the blessings of my ancestors up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of the one distinguished among his brothers. Now, this blessing is a little bit different than the others. Because the majority of it is not a prophecy. The majority of it is a poetic account of Joseph's life rather than a prophecy for his descendants. In fact, only the last part, verse number 6, is actually a prophecy. And of course, it's for the two tribes that bore Joseph's sons' names, the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Reuben. Now, remember, Joseph was the recipient of the birthright, which meant that he received a double portion of the inheritance. But Jacob decided to honor Joseph even more by dividing his portion of the inheritance between his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So instead of there being just one tribe, the tribe of Joseph, there were two tribes representing Joseph. Of his double portion, each of his sons receives a portion. So you had the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim. So the very last part, verse 26, is a prophecy for those two tribes, the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh. But as I said, the first part of the blessing is a poetic account of Joseph's life. So let's see how Jacob described Joseph's life. Look at verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. Now, Jacob used a fruitful vine as an analogy to describe how productive and fruitful Joseph's life had been. And let me tell you, it looked like it was going downhill. But it didn't. God was able to use everything that happened to elevate him to the place or the position that he wanted him to be in. Joseph's life was as productive and fruitful as a vine that was planted near a spring, and whose branches grow so fast and so large that it literally climbs over a wall until it covers everything. How many of you ever seen a wall that's been built and there's a vine growing, and the vine's growing so fast and so big and so large it just covers the whole fence and you can't even see the fence? That's what's being described here. He's describing the productivity and the fruitfulness of Joseph's life. He's like this fruitful branch who grows so fast and so large that it literally climbs over this wall and it eventually covers everything. And people, that's a perfect description of him. Nothing could stop Joseph. And anything that got in his way, any obstacle, any wall that went up, he just climbed over like a vine over a wall until finally his authority covered everything and everyone. First, his authority covered his own home. That's why he received the coat of many colors. You see, we read that, we're taught that in Sunday school. We have no idea what that means. But what it meant is he was chosen to receive the birthright. But then his authority covered over all of Egypt, second only unto Pharaoh himself. Nothing stopped him. But success like that is bound to cause jealousy and resentment in others. And it did. When people saw how God was blessing him and how productive and how fruitful Joseph was, people were bitter. They were resentful. Look at verse 23. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility. People, that's exactly what happened. His brothers were going to kill him. And then they decided, why kill him? Let's sell him into slavery. So he was sold into slavery and went to Egypt. And Potiphar actually bought him. And he found out that everything that he touched was blessed. And he noticed that no matter where he put Joseph, it seemed like that area was so blessed. And he became richer and richer until finally he said, you're over everything. Only thing I decide is what I'm going to eat today and what clothes I'm going to wear. Joseph, you're over everything else. And of course, it was so fruitful and so productive. And yet, here comes a wall. Potiphar's wife falsely accused him. He's thrown into prison. But it didn't matter because God, or I should say, because his faith in God remained strong. And God blessed him even during his time of persecution and adversity. Look at verses 24 and 25. But his bow remained strong, remained steady. In other words, he never gave up. He kept fighting. His strong arm stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob. In other words, it's going to tell us why he kept fighting. Because it was God who strengthened him. He put his faith in him. He put his trust in him. And when you do that, no matter what the obstacles are, doesn't matter what wall is placed in front of you, God will make you like a fruitful vine that's planted near a spring that will go over the wall, and your authority, your fruitfulness will cover everything. And that's exactly what happened. And he's telling us why it happened. Because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel. Because of your Father's God who helps you. Because of the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the sky above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and womb. Everything you touch, everything you do is being blessed by God. And now, after he's described the fruitful and productive life of Joseph, now we get to the prophecy part. Verse 26. The blessings of your father have surpassed the blessing of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of the one distinguished among his brothers. Now remember, even though he's prophesying this to Joseph, it's not really to Joseph. Who's it to? His descendants, the tribes that bear his name. The tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim, also known as the house of Judah. So what this is saying is the blessings that came upon Joseph were even greater than the ones that came upon his ancestors, including Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And those blessings would continue to flow through both of the tribes that represented Joseph. And according to this prophecy, just as those blessings fell squarely on Joseph's head, on the crown of his head, they would also rest squarely on the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. And they did. In fact, with the exception of the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh were the two most prominent tribes. No other tribe had more power or more prestige than the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. Why? Because I told you, the destiny, or I should say the character and the actions of the ancestor of those tribes determined the destiny and the future of their descendants. And we need to realize that if you're going to have children. Now, let's look at the prophecy that was given to Benjamin. Look at verse 27. This is really good too. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening divides the plunder. Now, I want you to take a look at the map again to see where the tribe of Benjamin was located. All of this is the tribe of Judah. See Judah right there? All of this green is the tribe of Judah. Now remember, because Simeon was cruel, they were scattered. They didn't actually get their own land. They were scattered and were given cities, and then some of them went to Ephraim. But all of this is Judah. Now here's the tribe of Ephraim. And wedged between Ephraim and Judah is the tribe of Benjamin. This is the tribe of Benjamin right there. Now the tribe of Benjamin was situated between the two rival tribes, the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Ephraim, which meant that it became a war zone when the kingdom of Israel split. So in order to survive, it had to be as vicious and as cunning as a wolf, because most of the battles between the northern kingdom, which was known as what? Ephraim, and the southern kingdom, which was known as Judah, right, took place in what area? The territory of Benjamin. In fact, here's what most people don't know. Jerusalem is not located in the tribe or in the territory of the tribe of Judah. Where is Jerusalem located? In the territory of the tribe of Benjamin. Look at Joshua chapter 18, verse number 28. Notice what it says up here. Zelah, Haleph, the Jebusite city. What's the Jebusite city? That is Jerusalem. Gibeah and Kiriath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. So Jerusalem is not situated inside the territory of the tribe of Judah. It's situated, or it's located inside the territory of the tribe of Benjamin. So every time Jerusalem was attacked by the northern kingdom, every time it was attacked by the Assyrians, every time it was attacked by the Egyptians, every time it was attacked by the Babylonians, it was always fought in the territory of Benjamin, because that's where Jerusalem was located. That's why they had to be as ferocious as a wolf. And people, they were. This isn't in my notes, but let me just give you a little assignment. Read through the book of Judges. Whenever they had to go to war against Benjamin, it wasn't one or two tribes that went against them. They all had to gang up on Benjamin. You want to know why? because Benjamin was as tough as snot. I'm telling you. I'll explain that analogy sometime. But anyways. Now, if Jerusalem was located in the territory of Benjamin, where was the temple located? Not a trick question. Where is the temple? Where was the temple located? In Jerusalem, right? Inside Jerusalem, there's the Temple Mount, and the Temple Mount was where the temple was. And the Temple Mount is on the northern side of the old city of Jerusalem. So if Jerusalem was situated in the territory of the tribe of Benjamin, where was the temple located? Yes, in the territory of Benjamin. Now listen to this. Just as Moses prophesied, who never saw the promised land. Moses prophesied where the temple would be. And I want to show you. Remember, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, Moses blessed each tribe just as Jacob blessed each of his sons. And like the blessings of Jacob, the blessings that Moses bestowed upon each tribe were actually prophecies. Now, notice what Moses said to the tribe of Benjamin. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse number 12. And of Benjamin he said, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him. And the Lord shall cover him all day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders. Who is he referring to? God. And the temple was the house of God. So it says, God shall dwell. In other words, his temple shall be between whose shoulders? The tribe of Benjamin. So in other words, God's temple would be located in Benjamite territory between its two shoulders. Now let me show you something very interesting. This is Dan. Dan goes all the way over to here. And this is Benjamin right here. But Dan could not defeat the Philistines. And they didn't want to try. So what Dan did was Dan traveled up north and they settled up here at the foothills of Mount Hermon. So they're way up here, the tribe of Dan. And when that happened, Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, they extended their boundaries west all the way over to here. Now I want you to notice something about their land. There's the head, there's the left shoulder, there's the right shoulder, and where is Jerusalem, where the temple was? Right between the shoulders. Moses never saw the promised land. Now, when I say that, I mean he never actually went there physically. I'll take you to Mount Nebo. Those of you who are going with me, we'll go over to Jordan, and we're going to go to Mount Nebo that's in the territory of Jordan. And on a clear day, we're going to stand where Moses did. We're going to pray that it's a clear day. We're going to be able to see the Dead Sea, the Jordan River, all the way up. And if it's a very clear day, we're going to see the opening to the Jezreel Valley, which is the Valley of Armageddon, and even a little bit of the Sea of Galilee. That's how far you can see on Mount Nebo. That's what all Moses was able to see. When he couldn't go into the promised land, God allowed him to see it right before he died. But he never saw where the temple would be because it's hidden. After Jericho, you've got the mountain of temptation where Jesus went out into the wilderness and was tempted. And further past that, the road to Jericho to Jerusalem is up there. He never saw it. And yet he prophesied that God would dwell between the shoulders of Benjamin. And that's exactly what happened. It is amazing to me to study these prophecies that were written so many years before Jesus came. And then you see how they literally came true. I don't know how you can't believe in the Bible.